Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's meeting of the Combined Fire Authorities Corporate Governance Committee. As usual, the meeting will be recorded and uploaded to YouTube, and after the meeting, you can view it online. The link will be available on the CFA website. I ask that all members ensure that their mobile phones are either turning off and turn to silent, please. Quick rummaging in bags and pockets. I'll start off with apologies for absence. I've received apologies from Councillor Bannister and Councillor Barton, with Councillor Posnett and Councillor Joel substituting. Thank you to the substitutes. Item 2 is to receive declarations by members of interest in respect of any item on this agenda. Does anyone have any interest that they wish to declare? Take that as a no. Item 3 is to advise of any other items which the Chair has decided to take as urgent. I've not been notified of any urgent items. Chairman's announcements. I have 3 announcements today. The first one is the variable response vehicles. The first of the VRVs now been operationally available for approximately 6 weeks from the Market Bosworth station. It's been very busy operationally, used to excellent effect on multiple occasions. Crew feedback has been impressive thus far. The second vehicle arrived in service on the 13th of November and is undergoing its final radio installation and checks before becoming operational shortly. Item 2, the mobilising system. The mobilising system project is progressing very well, with the test system being available to staff and populated with data. Training is being planned and the system is well on schedule to be available earlier than expected, which is excellent news. The full update is being presented to the full Combined Fire Authority meeting next Wednesday, 29th of November. Introduction of new technology. Some new technology has been introduced into the control room. This enables control staff to send a text message to the emergency caller. Once they agree, with one single press, the device will automatically send its GPS and the what 3 words location to control. This will enable the service to mobilise to incidents much more quickly, and especially those incidents on roadways and rural locations where the actual exact positions may be not quite so clear. So the first substantive item on the agenda is, can we confirm the minutes of the meeting on the 20th of September? This is items 5 to 10 of your agenda pack. Councillor Newton, I'll hand over to you as you were chairing that meeting, if that's okay.
Yes.
Are you happy to propose?
Yeah, accept those, yes.
Thank you. Can I have a second? I'll say Councillor Grimley. Thank you. Those in favour, please show. Thank you. Those minutes are adopted. Item 6. So the first report on today's agenda is the financial monitoring to the end of September 2023. This is on pages 11 to 16 of your agenda pack. Stuart McAvoy, Head of Finance, will present this item. So I'll hand over to you. Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you, Chair. So this report sets out the forecast outturn position for the authority as at the end of September, so halfway through the financial year. The forecast revenue outturn at the end of July was an overspend of 341,000, which has now increased to 482,000. It's only been 2 months since the forecast outturn position was last presented to this committee, so not surprisingly, many of the same variances to budget exist. These are set out in full within the report. Since this isn't new information, I won't dwell on these existing variances, but some of the main movements from the previous report which have contributed to the increased overspend position include a reduction in the underspend on on-call staffing from 330,000 to 250,000 pounds. A reduction in the saving on fuel as prices have started to rise again. That's from 100,000 pounds to 50,000 pounds, and an increase in the overspend on inflation on contracts and one-off costs associated with specific consultancy work, including but not limited to the BRAC review. Moving on to capital, an overspend is being declared on the property programme. That's due to essential boiler replacement work at the Eastern and Central stations. And it is also worth noting that the forecast cost of refurbishment work at the Eastern and Southern stations has increased. If the costs can't be brought down to within the existing budget, then any shortfall would need to be factored into the budget setting report for next financial year. There is also some significant slippage on the vehicle replacement programme. That's arising from unavoidable supply delays, with some vehicles now expected to be received early in 24-25. So just in summary, given the backdrop of persistently stubborn inflation and significant increases in pay, both of which are outside the control of the authority, the forecasted overspend of £482,000 is actually far less than it might otherwise have been. The revenue overspend will be funded from the budget strategy reserve that exists in part to cover fluctuations in the outturn position, and the capital overspend will be funded from the estate strategy reserve. Although given the future calls on this pot, it should be noted that this would reduce resources that are available for future years' budgets. Let's take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Stuart. Councillor Newby.
It's just a question for me. In terms of the underspend on support staff, I was just wanting to know whether or not that will have an impact on the number of staff being required or their ability to carry out their job. I just wonder if you could respond to that, Colin. Thank you.
Happy, Chair, for me to respond.
Yeah, certainly.
The underspend is made up from two main areas. One is vacancies and recruiting to those vacancies. Certainly my aspiration at the moment is the positions we have in the establishment of the organisation are correct and we would look to fill them, but we always have some periods where people leave the organisation, we don't recruit to that. And the other is, as you'd expect by a responsible organisation, we budget for everyone in the organisation being at the top of their pay grade. But as people join us, they start and work through that. So there is generally an underspend in those areas. I don't see that we could look to lose any of those roles. Certainly not my aspiration at the moment. I would be keen to fill them. It's just recruitment is an ongoing challenge for us in every aspect, really, around keeping people in the organisation, recruiting new ones and onboarding them. It's a challenge. But I certainly wouldn't be looking to lose those posts. Depending on how budget setting goes, etc. We might have to review that, but that's not my intention at the moment.
Thank you, Hope. Any other questions? I'll move to note.
Sorry, Chair.
Yep.
Just one. It's probably a newbie question as well. Just with regard to the replacement of the reserves, because obviously, if we are removing sizable space out of our reserve and looking at RAC and work going forward, will we be seeing in the budgets coming forward to next year a way that we will begin to address and replace some of the revenue back into the reserves? Would be.
So the budget report for next year will set out more fully the reserve position and the planned use of those reserves. Yeah.
Thank you.
One online, Chair.
Oh, yep. Okay. What have we got on?
That's Mr. Backery.
Mr. Backery.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to play the newbie hat today, if that's all right. Just a couple of observations on the financial report. So thank you to Stuart for the report. In terms of the comment around the supplies and services forecast overspend by 363k, and there's a reference to inflationary. It's more a question around the budget setting. I think you referenced earlier about the assumptions, because inflation last year was obviously peaking, and now it's expected to fall. So was that known or unknown from a risk point of view? And then the other observation around the capital slippage is linked to staff availability. So that kind of look, and one of the colleagues just said, looking ahead to next year, how's that been now? You know, the flow from this year to next year. So those things, people may not be recruited. So what does that mean for next year's slippage? So that kind of looking ahead, so that in terms of financials, they're more robust, or can be got opportunity to make the financials more robust than perhaps having a reoccurring conversation.
So just in response to the first part of that, inflation was built into the 23-24 budget. the extent of that, the inflationary pressure exceeded the budget revision. And there was, I mean, in relation to cleaning, which was picked up specifically within the report, that was one element, for example, where there was a number of years of inflation that was applied in a point in time. So there was an accumulation of years of inflation in that particular regard, for example. I think in relation to the staffing element in next year's capital programme, I think John might be best placed to respond.
Thank you, Stuart, and welcome, Mr. Backer. It's the first time we met, so nice to meet you. I think there's a couple of elements here. So the capital financing and the slippage in particular has come around appliance availability and vehicle availability. That's due to national global shortages for a number of reasons, which I don't think I'm qualified to speak about. But what we are seeing is chassis order times that used to take potentially 2 to 3 months to get a chassis in are now taking somewhere between 12 and 18 months. I don't see that changing for the next year or two. We've got effective contracts in place that allow call-offs, but we will always be beholden to the chassis availability, particularly for fire engines. But even so, for our smaller vehicles, so your Ford Transit type vehicles, we are still seeing quite a lot of delay in that. And the other thing, without wanting to bamboozle you with science, we are setting our budget now to be published by February, Stuart, I think.
Yep, indeed.
What we won't know is the pay awards, the nationally agreed pay awards by the NJC for both Grey and Green Book staff, probably until June, July time. So we are using all the best indicators possible to us, but to a degree, it is our best anticipation of what that may be. So there will always be some degree of variance in the budget. I would very much love the national mechanisms to resolve prior to budget setting. That would be most helpful, but I don't think they listen to me as much as I'd like them to. So hopefully that answers your question. I think we'll get a bit better, but there will always be a degree of variance. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Callum. Are you happy with the answer, Mr. Backer?
Yes, thank you. I've come from a public sector experience of police and fire previous life form, so I appreciate the challenges that colleagues have said and the timing around budget setting and actual economic events as they unfold during the reporting year. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. I move to note A, that the revenue budget and capital programme position at the end of September 2023, and B, the capital overspend of £422,000 to be funded from the Capital Fund Reserve and the State's Strategy Reserve, producing resources available for future budgets. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Newton, thank you. Those in favour, please show. That's duly noted. Item 7 is the completion of the 2020-21 Statement of Accounts. This is on pages 17 to 22 of your agenda. Gavin Barker from Mazars has joined the meeting remotely for this item. Welcome, Gavin. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon. This is a very brief item. As members may be aware, delivery of audits is a little bit of a sort of national problem at the moment. We haven't done too bad in your case in terms of delivering audits in a relatively timely way, given the sort of pressures in the marketplace for audit work. This report just covers the final completion of the 2020-21 audit. We were unable to issue the audit certificate formally concluding and closing the audit for a very long time. So we were able to issue the audit opinion on the 2021 financial statements on the 3rd of December 21, but we've only recently been able to issue the audit certificate. And the main reason for that is we had to wait for National Audit Office to complete its work on whole of government accounts, which they did in the late summer, and we've now been able to issue the audit certificate. So just to remind members of the 2021 financial statements, we issued an unqualified opinion on those financial statements. We reported on the authorities' arrangements for economy, effectiveness and efficiency in its services, and we didn't identify any significant weaknesses or make any recommendations in relation to the authorities' arrangements. We reported to National Audit Office on whole of government accounts, and now finally the audit is formally closed with the issue of the audit certificate, which is in your packs. Just before I finish, a brief update on the subsequent audit. So the 2021-22 audit, similarly, that was finished in a relatively timely way. We issued an unqualified opinion on the 21-22 audit. We've reported on value for money. We've reported to the National Audit Office on whole of government accounts. But again, in relation to 21-22, we can't issue the final audit certificate until National Audit Office have formally completed their work on whole of government accounts. That's anticipated to be by the end of March 2024. It's a bit of a formality, this. So when we get the clearance on that, we'll be able to issue the audit certificate, which will finally close off the 21-22 audit. In relation to the 22-23 audit, the sort of most recent financial year, we're on course to report to the authority meeting on the 29th of November. That is next week, isn't it? Next week. We'll be reporting on that then. We're anticipating, again, being able to issue an unqualified audit opinion on the 22-23 financial statements. We'll follow that as swiftly as possible with our report on value for money arrangements. Again, we don't anticipate reporting any significant weaknesses or recommendations in relation to value for money arrangements. We'll also be able to report on whole of government accounts. But again, once again, we'll have a delay before we can issue the formal audit certificate. Members may or may not be aware that there will be new auditors from 23-24 under the new PSAA contract. Your audit is transferring to another audit firm. Our objective, my sort of only objective really, is to make the transition to the new auditor as smooth as possible. So me and my team are working hard, and it's great that we get such a good cooperation from the team at Leicestershire Fire, and we're sort of keen to finish the 22-23 audit as quickly and as efficiently as possible, and smoothly hand over to Grant Thornton. I think it's Grant Thornton, and they're going to sort of take things up from 23-24. So that's sort of an update on the 2021 certificate, but also an update on sort of more recent audits and where we are with them. So thank you, Chair. Quite happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Gavin. Has anybody got any questions? No. Okay. I'll move that the completion of the audit for the year ended 31st of March 2021 and the issuing of the audit completion certificate be noted. Okay, second, please. Councillor Newton, thank you. Those in favour, please show. That's duly noted. Okay, item 8. Thank you very much, Gavin. Item 8 next is the performance monitoring April to October 2023. You'll find this on pages 23 to 62 of your agenda pack. Callum, I think you're taking this one.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members, and welcome to the new independent members to the committee. This is the regular performance report that I normally produce to the committee, and as usual, it's a very large appendix within the report, giving you a full suite of information as best as possible. But you'll be pleased to know I won't go through every individual page. In line with that, I'll focus mainly around pages 27 to 29 of your bundle, which is the summary table. So the overarching performance update is this is a bit of a mixed bag, to be honest. There's some really good areas of performance, but there is some areas that do look to present some challenges to us. So, for example, fires are down. That's a very good news story, but false alarms and special services are up. And some of the reason for that is quite challenging, actually. Clearly, we had the very long, hot summer last year, which influenced the numbers of fires. And equally, within the 3-year period, we are still encompassing some of the COVID lockdown period. So they're slightly skewed at the moment, but we'll kind of go through that. And clearly, we've had quite a bit of rain recently, which has impacted on some of the figures as well. So if I take you to KCI 11B, special services, which is, I might be looking at it, 14B. Still on page 27, paragraph 14, element 14B. This continues to be a dynamic area for us, and the number of incidents appears to be increasing. particularly around road traffic collisions. And previously, members would have remember me talking about those areas where they continue to be unpredictable by their nature. They seem to be happening in the more rural areas of the county, which is a lot more of a challenge for us to identify exactly where the incidents occur. And we have an increased travel time. Obviously, within the chair's briefing note or chair's announcement, you would have seen we've introduced a new technology to really try and cut down that addressable location time. Won't change the travel time, but if we can take 30, 40 seconds off getting where they are, it will help in the outcome. The positive side of this is most of those are happening outside the city areas and most of those are not fires. So we believe our prevention works to be having some really good effect, but it is posing us a challenge. And our community risk management plan is currently out for consultation, looking at changing the attendance time because of exactly those reasons. Ideally, we would want to prevent RTCs from happening rather than just responding to them. But I think it's fair to say at this point, we don't have a statutory requirement under the Fire and Rescue Services Act to prevent road traffic collisions. That is a shared responsibility with the Road Safety Partnership. Something we take very seriously, and we're looking really seriously within the organisation around diverting more resources to the road safety campaigns. But I have to be fair with members, it's not a statutory responsibility, and we are thinking very carefully of where we could get those resources to go. I don't necessarily want to stop our fire prevention work. It is a statutory responsibility to then support the road safety campaign. So we are challenging ourselves quite a lot around how we can allocate more resources to that. However, and I don't mean to bamboozle people with numbers, road traffic collisions are actually really quite difficult to ascertain if they're increasing. Clearly, the numbers we're going to is increasing, but the numbers of cars on the road is increasing, and we don't know by how many. The numbers of journey are increasing, we don't know by many. And equally, the number of people involved in road traffic collisions don't just live within LLR. So we could conduct all of the best prevention activity in the world. We still have people passing through the county. So we may still kind of have a challenge to really reduce those numbers. But we're up for the challenge and we are going to look to really allocate some of those resources as best we can. But staying within category 1.4B, special services and other categories, they are showing an increase. Floodings have gone up, as you may well have expected. We were quite lucky within Leicester and Rutland that we dodged the two recent storms. I'm sorry, I forget the name, so I won't try and pronounce them. And I would just highlight to members as well, just for an awareness point of view, we don't have a statutory responsibility to respond to flooding. And when we do, we have relatively limited capacities, which relate specifically to rescuing people or people injured from floodings. And we have a lot of pumps, which is great, but they're specifically designed for firefighting, not to pump out basements. So they can do that, but only generally up to about a foot of water. And certainly in wide area flooding, we can't pump it from one basement into the next. It's kind of that ever living cycle. So it's just more of an awareness around our actual capabilities within flooding. And I think finally on this one, it's an area we're actively monitoring. Leicestershire Police have recently announced their campaign called Most Appropriate Agency, which is making sure they manage their capacity to only attend incidents that they have statutory responsibility for, rather than a whole raft that they're currently attending. And as the police do that, and I have to say I don't necessarily disagree with them, we have to be particularly careful that the fire service isn't assumed to fill that void where we are also not the most appropriate agency. We attend a lot of special service incidents because it's the right thing for our community and to support our partner agencies. But we could be very quickly overwhelmed and consumed in the call volume. So it's something myself and my officers are working on quite keenly to make sure we don't get sucked into that vacuum where we're not the best agency to respond to that. So I think that's one we'll have to continue to monitor through this particular committee. Moving on to page 28, KCI number 3, and we have kind of touched on this already around our attendance times. It's an area we continue to look at and continue to explore where we can make efficiencies. As part of the community risk management plan, we have reviewed where our stations are, where our resources are based. They do appear to be in the best possible places thus far to manage the vast majority of the calls, but it is something we're going to need to continue to look at and review to make sure we can get our appliances to people as quickly as possible when they need us. And obviously we'll look to incorporate technology where that's available. So we're doing that with the Good SAM within the mobilising system now, and the new mobilising system when that comes online is expected again to make call handling times a lot quicker. I don't really have an answer of how we could dramatically drive that down. Even if we had many more fire engines, because of the nature of LLR and the rurality of some of it, they probably wouldn't be in the right places at the right time. So again, I think it's just one where we need to be particularly honest with yourselves as the fire authority and the community. Prevention has got to be far, far better than responding. Which leads me on to the final point before I open to questions, Chair, is KCIs 4 and 5 on pages 29. They sit at the page and they're relatively small. I can't overemphasise enough the achievement of what the service is delivering in these prevention and protection strands. The home fire safety checks and fire protection enforcement statistics are considerably high within the National League tables on raw numbers alone, let alone when you factor in that we are a relatively small service with relatively few staff members delivering an awful lot. And it kind of is, the prevention and protection legs are often forgot about because they're not the big red trucks and the blue lights, but they are 2 of the 3 legs of our stool. So hopefully members will be assured that we are tending to all of our statutory responsibilities with as much due diligence and vigour as possible. And that is particularly well noted within the HMI report and the National Home Office statistics being within the, I'll say top 10. I think it's slightly higher than top 10, but I don't have the figures to hand. I'll probably pause there and allow members' questions, Chair.
Thank you very much, Callum.
Yeah, it's just a question around casualties and people dying, and I just wanted to ensure that proper mechanisms are in place so that we can look after officers who have to attend such events.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as we talked about quite a few times within this committee, KCI 2 talks about fatalities and casualties.
Yes.
And then the bottom part of that, 2.5A and 2.6, talks about TRIM, which is the trauma risk management. That's our internal welfare mechanisms to make sure we're supporting staff who are directly or indirectly affected. So, for example, control room staff, they take some very harrowing calls, don't necessarily get completion. Sometimes that can be even more painful than knowing what happens or seeing what happens. So the TRIM mechanism in place and well established now. We have a number of different other welfare mechanisms, including internal support and external support, so external counselling. And whilst the service pay for that, we don't become involved in it to give it that independence and credibility for people that don't feel comfortable coming forward to the service.
Thank you.
Thank you, Callum.
It's just for reassurance of us as the committee that mechanisms are in place to help people when they need it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. It's just touching on 1.4B again, and it's just around the suicide and suicide attempts. You've asked part of the question was regarding to officers and support staff, but equally, I just wanted kind of reassurance and sticking my other kind of older hat on. And I'm sure we do, but I just wanted to confirm that the fire service is part of that strategic wider meeting that's held in LLR on around suicide prevention and things. I'm sure you were, but it was just to seek reassurance in that, because obviously with the numbers going up, with the strain on mental health services and cost of living crisis and stuff, you know, this is kind of like a situation that might get worse before it gets better, fortunately. So it was just to seek some reassurance on that.
Certainly, we're connected very well within the Community Safety Partnership. I don't know if we directly attend the suicide prevention meeting. I will have to take that away and look into that for you. What I am particularly would like to stress as well, the number of incidents we're going to is increasing, and I think it's only likely to increase. But equally within that, we employ a decent number of people within the organisation. So we have with the organisation name has just popped out of my head, but we're part of a national suicide prevention helpline specifically for staff, where they can ring, again, funded by ourselves, but completely anonymous from the service, to help people who are struggling with those issues. So yes, we are linked in, but I'll have to come back to you with the exact details out. That's okay, Councillor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy with that?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Oh, there's one online, Chair.
There's one online. Oh, yep, sorry. I think. Yep.
Hello again. Just some observations. So thank you for the going through those stats. Two questions or two observations. First is just looking at around the KCI 6, I think it is, around staff capacity, staff availability. And just trying to draw out some understanding around the performance. So, because obviously all the stats indicate sickness is much higher this year than previous years. If I read it, across, all the actuals are much higher than previous 3-year averages. What's the kind of insight from a kind of what would a performance look like if we're been to target? So that kind of benchmarking performance analysis could be understood in the context of what you've actually reported. So we can say this is what's happened, which is what your stats are showing in terms of your handling time, but what's the relationship to staff availability or sickness or whatever, or lack of availability, and what would the performance if that could be understood. And then the second question, which sort of follows on to the relationships, is on KCI 4 home safety checks, all the good stuff that which seem much better than in terms of higher than the 3-year average. Is there a correlation between that stat and the fire call-outs, incidents, and localities, and see what those kind of relationships could be? Perhaps insight could be drawn out to help resource planning or prioritisation, something that gives us something more than just numbers, but gives us an insight on how you're sort of planning for things or trends, to say that in terms of the good quality work that's been done by the colleagues there.
Thank you, Mr. Backer. A couple of excellent questions. It feels like I prepared an answer for these already. So the sickness stats, I kind of really hear you along the, yes, it's very good information, but so what? There's actually a national set of data called the Cleveland data set, which we present periodically to the committee, that shows us being within the top 5 fire and rescue services for the lowest number of sickness across the board. Clearly, I and my officers would love that number to be 0. It's never going to be, because of the nature of the work and the number of people we're doing. We do work really quite hard to reduce and mitigate the number of shifts lost, because needless to say, that has an impact elsewhere, either moving staff around who are on duty, or indeed bringing in overtime as and when needed to keep clients' availability. So really quite happy with where we are with the sickness stats, but we continually monitor it and continually look to drive that down. Ultimately, I think our story is a very, very good story across LLR with where we are, but we're always going to have to work with sickness and make sure we get people back into work. The modified duties section, which is KCI 6.3, again, is another one where operational staff aren't fully available to do their role, but we do bring them back into the organisation to do what they can safely do to help their rehabilitation, but also to deliver some outcomes for the community. So wherever possible, we look to mitigate the sickness, but I do live in the real world and we will be, we'll always have some sickness. KCI 4, regards to home fire safety checks and the impact, what we have got now, and as I've shared with the organisation in the last probably 2 months, is a really powerful story around a direct correlation between the number of home fire safety checks we do. When that goes up, the number of fires we attend goes down. And certainly when we do more home fire safety checks, the number of injured people in house fires dramatically comes down. And I've shared that with staff. I'd be more than happy to share the link with members, actually, around the correlation between the amount we do and the impact it has. We've had quite a healthy debate in the organisation of, is it just quantity versus quality? And there is an argument to say, actually, in this case, quantity alone does change your quality of output, but equally, we always want to have a really good input with our members of the community. And there's even, dare I say it, where we historically didn't do as many for a few years, you can actually see the number of fires go up and the number of people injured go up. So there is a direct correlation, in our view, between the home fire safety checks and the outcomes out of safer people, safer places.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'll forward the link onto Gemma so that you can see it's a YouTube video that we've done for internal staff comms.
Thank you. Okay, happy with the answer?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, thank you. I'll move that the performance of the Leicestershire Fire and Rescue Service for the period April 2023 to October 2023 is noted. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Betty. Those in favour, please show. Thank you. That's noted. Agenda item number 9. We move on to the Service Development Programme and our plan 2020 to 2024. Appendix 8 tasks. Tom, I think this is you again.
Thank you. I promise you it's the last time you hear me talk at any kind of length. I often wax lyrical about this report because I think it shows so much of the other stuff going on within the service. It's not less important or more important. It's just an awful lot of work going on. And as for a relatively small fire and rescue service with relatively low funding, I'm really quite proud to be able to talk about some of the achievements we're able to deliver on a continual basis. I won't go through any of the individual elements because there's kind of three real themes to the projects we've got going on. One is around the ICT category, looking to modernise and improve where we can, increase the resilience to the infrastructure and bring us much more into the modern ICT age. That is often a challenge and takes time, but we've got quite a lot of projects that are starting to yield some really, really positive results there. We've got a number of estates work, so our facilities and estates across the board, particularly conscious we sit here in a very lovely modern HQ building. Not all of our sites are as lovely and as modern as that, and we need to bring those facilities up to speed and equally bring them into the very modern world, particularly around inclusivity, privacy and welfare provision. So we've got a lot of work going on at our on-call and hold time stations. And then a number of operational upgrades, as you'd expect us to do. We're keen to continually evolve the service and offer more and more facilities to our communities of Leicester and Rutland. And the other one I would normally talk about, which I won't, is the fantastic progress for the mobilising system. I'll save that for next week, so you can hear about that. But rest assured, it is going very, very well. And then the second part of the report, pages 67 to 69, kind of details just the sheer amount of work going on in the organisation. I'm really impressed with what we're doing. I have to accept at the moment the organisation is pretty much delivering everything at capacity that we're able to do, but that's not because of myself or the senior team, it's because of incredibly dedicated individuals in the organisation that care about making a difference. So I think I'd probably offer you assurance verbally that we are doing absolutely everything we can do, but equally happy to take any questions if some of that's not coming across.
Thank you very much, Callum. Just a couple from me to start off with. So page 68, paragraph 43, which mentions the dangers of the e-bikes and the lithium-ion batteries. So that's something that we're seeing a bit of a problem that's increasing. Is there anything in particular we can do to try and address it?
So yeah, lithium-ion batteries is it's a very broad and wide subject. So I think I have to open by saying lithium-ion batteries are generally incredibly safe. We're sat around the table with all of them, with our laptops and our mobile phones, and hopefully haven't experienced too many issues. But the number of devices that are using lithium-ion batteries appear to be going up exponentially, and some of them aren't built with the same rigour and testing that our laptops are. So nationally, as a fire sector, we are seeing some very, very significant fire incidents, particularly around e-bikes and e-scooters, which have been imported from various parts of the world. Tragically, there has been a number of fatalities throughout the country with that. I'm not quite ready to show it yet, but we have an incredibly powerful video of an incident we attended in the city where we rescued two people who, by all rights, should be dead and aren't. Because of various factors, but namely the intervention from those crews. So yes, we are seeing impacts from it. And there will be a national safety campaign coming out from, I believe it to be Home Office, if not from the National Fire Chiefs Council. And it comes down to charging using the correct chargers and not damaging lithium-ion batteries. But I always have to caveat that I'm not saying lithium-ion batteries are unsafe. They categorically are. The numbers we're seeing is going up. And equally vehicle technology, and more and more hybrid and electric vehicles on the road. Again, I have to say lithium-ion batteries are safe. It's just the prevalence of them. We haven't yet seen the impact of vehicle fires or significant failures in motor vehicles, but it'll be a matter of time just because the numbers go up. And just in case there are any questions, the fire at Luton Airport that started in the car park did not involve a lithium-ion battery car. It was a diesel-powered car.
The second point is that on page 69, some work has been done, the waterside responders and also the biker down. So someone's actually done CPR for real in the past. That's a really interesting initiative. Is that going to be continued, or those going to be continued?
Absolutely. So Biker Down this week has launched its latest campaign, of which we've been at the forefront for the national campaign. So for those members that don't know, we look to educate motorcyclists who potentially need to perform CPR, other conditions that revolve around the motorcycle kind of fraternity and world. We have just launched an initiative called Do It for Dave, where a motorcyclist attended one of our Biker Down events. A short time later, they were at a racetrack and someone fell off their bike with a heart attack. Their intervention saved that individual's life. It's a really powerful story. It went live yesterday. We've got quite a lot of social media around it. So yes, we're going to continue it. If anything, I see Biker Down going upwards in our agenda. Really, really powerful story. And we were lucky enough to have the individual who performed CPR and the individual who fell ill here to kind of support and tell that tale. And we actually presented it at the motorbike show at NEC on Monday this week as well. So yeah, it's gaining a lot of traction. Conscious, our roads are particularly attractive to motorcyclists with the hills, the undulations, the rural roads and some of the network. In fact, I even know there are some in the room who enjoy that, but yeah.
Thank you very much, Callum. Okay, any other questions? Anyone?
Can I just ask, long ago in my day as a nurse, teaching first aid, we were always told not to remove a motorcyclist helmet. Obviously, the CPR, it's got to be moved. So are you sort of doing any sort of pointers when removing a helmet? Be extremely careful or?
Absolutely. And more to the point, not only when to remove the helmet, but how to remove the helmet whilst protecting the C-spine. That in itself is a complete technique for a helmet itself. But yes, we teach all of that, and it does, unfortunately, it comes down to if someone is dead on the side of the road, the C-spine injury is the last of their worries. It's more about getting air into their lungs. But we teach all of that on the course, and it's well received, let's say.
Oh, I'm sure.
Thank you, Pam. Any other questions? The progress made since September 2023 in the delivery of projects in the service development programme and the tasks that are included in our plan 2020-2024 be noted. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Betty. Those in favour, please show. Thank you, that's noted. Agenda item 10 is the progress against the internal audit plan 2023 to 24. And this is on pages 79 to 100 of your agenda pack. Neil Jones, Head of Internal Audit Services at the County Council, Matt Davis, Audit Manager, will present this item. I'll hand over.
Thank you very much. Neil sends his apologies today for time presenting the paper. Hopefully you will appreciate that last time we reported was September, so we're now in November, and there's a typical period where we don't do a lot of work for the fire service, so there's been a little change. So moving straight into the report, progress plan. It was the plan that was presented to this committee in March. Going straight into paragraph 6, we do talk about the high importance recommendations, but say by nature of being high importance, to pick those out in the detail when we got to paragraph 12. That's soon cover those. So on the 23-24 plan, to be honest, it's good news as far as I'm concerned. We started with 10 distinct pieces of work. 3 of those have been finalised, one of which has got a partial assurance rating, which we'll come to the reason when we talk about the high importance recommendations because they overlap. And then we've got another 7 pieces of work that are work in progress. But I'm at pains to say this, and I do so often, that there is logical reasons for those to be work in progress, that we're relying on full year samples, or part of it's to do with pausing while the recruitment campaign happens, etc., etc. So there are reasons for it. I'm happy that we're on track with audit. So that is good, and full cooperation from the staff as well. The thing that's of most interest, of course, is paragraph 12 and the high importance recommendations. And I just wanted to recap on the 3 high importance recommendations that are partial assurance reports that are in this committee domain. I think it'd be useful, certainly for the new independent members, but obviously recap. So the first one is in relation to contract procedure rules. And that was a piece of work we did previously, and that was really looking at things like a single database, that all contracts could be located, training was given, that we were looking at controls for whereby single suppliers were being used, benchmarking and things like that. The second one was in relation to ICT controls, without delving into the detail, because it's quite simple. It was basically an updated disaster recovery plan, and then the testing of that plan. And then finally, we had the accounts payables, which is just what we did on accounts payables. And then we also look at changes to bank accounts, because obviously that's quite prevalent at the minute, a high risk area. And it's the changes to bank accounts reports. So that they were the three areas. Moving on to each of those high risk areas in particular, the contract procedure rules, we came back to retest, and we found some of the issues still. So I have put on page 82 and 83 table there the areas, just to summarise them. Signed digital copies of contracts still needs to make sure they're on there. Training for staff. These are moving forward, and I will come to those as I put in the report. So existing staff and as part of a new induction, new starters. So there has been a review of that, and to make sure that government is covered within that. So there is progress. Monitoring, reporting training levels to management. So that's actually training levels that have been carried out. How much training has been undertaken? Has it been understood? Has it been, moving from I don't understand to thank you, I understand sort of assessments. Again, there's a revised implementation date for that. And then probably the most important one is periodic benchmarking and market testing for value for money purchasing. There are examples of multi-items from single suppliers, things like that, particularly in the workshops and things like that. There is logical reasons for it. There's, without going into all the details, but it's sort of a mixture of sourcing locally, and it's specialised kit you can only get from particular places, but it's just every so often doing that benchmarking exercise. More importantly in this area, then I put the reason for the delay, because I have been, I've gone to great lengths on this, to be honest, because of the delay and the fact that we're bringing this to the committee so often. But I do think Judy has moved forward with it. As you can see, they got appointment of trying to appoint to a new post of contracts and procurement officer, embedding the training now into those two areas, and also, putting it bluntly, balancing capacity with the desire to get something meaningful and sustainable. It's not a sticking plaster, it needs a permanent fix on this, and that doesn't come overnight, particularly if you're having to recruit new staff to the post as well.
That's not a small piece of work.
No, overlay on that, of course, new procurement regs, etc., coming down the line, then you can see that it's quite a major exercise and one to get right. So I'll gladly take questions on that, but I'd sooner just do the two as well, because they're quite
Sure.
easy. The ICT controls, the disaster recovery plans and testing. We've actually seen the disaster recovery testing strategy. It was, last time we spoke to it, it was in draft. I don't know if there's any updates on that, but it was due to be finalised by the end of November. So we'd actually seen it and we were happy with the sort of content it covered, but obviously not been finalised yet. So we didn't want to clear it off from this committee, and it's not due till the end of November anyway. So it sort of just misses this committee deadline. And then the actual DR testing strategy, the actual testing of it, that was originally to be December, and that has slipped now into early 2024. And put bluntly, ICT resources have been redirected to the mobilisation project. That doesn't mean, I'm sure as Callum would be able to say, that doesn't mean nothing is being done. It doesn't mean things aren't being tested. There's still penetration testing, etc., etc. So there is still work being done. It just means that that specific piece is not completed yet, and there's a slight delay on it. Finally, the accounts payable side, changes to bank accounts report. This was going to be, as part of the authority agreement, this was going to be carried out by one of the other authorities. It was meant to happen, it was in development, and basically it's just not been forthcoming a meaningful report that can be used. So to be fair to the service, if it was done internally, the cost would be far less than doing it externally with the software vendors. I think it's fair to say now that they've decided to go out to the software vendors. So it's really unfortunate, that delay, but at least progress is being made now, going out to the software vendors to get that report. There is interim safeguards in place. They're not 100% adequate. but I don't want to go into detail on something that's recording on YouTube. For sensitive reasons, you wouldn't expect me to. So before I'll gladly take questions because I realise there's a lot to take in there. In concluding, really, we've made good progress with the 23-24 plan. I'm happy with where we are. Although the high importance recommendations remain and have remained for a long time, I am happy with the direction of travel, and I think I can see movements forward. For me, that is the main thing. It is about competing plans, and I'll gladly take questions, as I'm sure Callum will, about the assessment of that as well.
Great.
Happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions, members?
Thank you.
I therefore move that the report be noted and that A, the 3 legacy partial assurance report ratings contained high importance recommendations that remain outstanding, and the ACFO service support continues to work to bring resolutions to these outstanding actions. But there are continued delays, and B, work is progressing well with the 2023-24 audit plan and is at the stage anticipated at this time of year. Have a seconder, please. Thank you. Those in favour, please show. Yeah, that's noted. I'll move on to item 11, which is the people programme of work. Callum, I'll hand over to you.
If it's okay, I'll hand over to Carl. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair, members. This agenda item is to update members on the survey actions and other people-related plans that the service is involved with. As members will know, that previously there have been a number of surveys as identified in paragraph 3. That resulted in the potential for a number of appropriate action plans out the back of those surveys. However, to avoid duplication of work, we've brought them together under one banner called the People Plan. And the People Plan will basically be delivering against all of those cultural surveys and action plans that we previously presented to us. And the idea is to reduce the duplication of effort. So a lot of the themes of our surveys, our reports, our action plans are cost-cutting.
Yeah.
So we've brought it under the umbrella of one People Plan. And as part of the People Plan, obviously there'll be some outputs such as developing our people and training people. I just draw members' attention to paragraphs 9 and 10, where it indicates that we've done a lot of work around developing our people in terms of supervisory managers, and also the Core Code of Ethics. Members will be aware Core Code of Ethics is national. It's a national initiative to ensure that all fire and rescue services are delivering against the Core Code of Ethics. In support of that, we've done a lot of work around the EDI, the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion. We have employed a positive action recruitment officers who are doing a lot of beneficial work in terms of improving the knowledge of the service, but also connecting with our communities to make sure that we better understand our communities. And for us, we're really pleased on that piece of work, and that's also resulted in improvement in some of our internal systems and processes around equality, diversity and inclusion. Added to that, and this will link to one of the agenda items earlier that one of the members raised a question on, we also established a service health and wellbeing officer, and that health and wellbeing officer is in place to make sure that we have the appropriate systems, pathways and support mechanisms in place for the mental health and physical wellbeing of our people. And that individual does offer support to individuals and also signposts into other areas. What I'd like to do is just bring members' attention back to paragraph 8 at the previous meeting. The members also requested an update on progress of discipline and grievance cases. And in addition to that, we've also established an independent reporting line called Say So. And that is to give our staff the confidence that whilst we have existing networks of reporting through line managers of whistleblowing and our bullying and harassment policies and such like, they can use a completely independent and anonymous reporting tool called Say So, which allows them to report any concerns they have. And the report they identifies there's only been minimal reports provided to that. So that's a good indicator for us that it says we're in a healthy position, but it gives us that reassurance that should people wish to report staff, they have many avenues. And just to bring this report to a conclusion before members would like to ask questions, is if you look at the appendix, it's got a list of the cases where it's progressed and closed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Carl. Any questions, Betty?
It's not so much a question, it's just to sort of support what the authority is doing in terms of equality and diversity. You've got a new officer in place now, and I've always worked closely with most of the officers in that position. And I look forward to sort of working closely with this officer. We'll be meeting shortly, and I'd like to commend the service and the work that they've done. They've actually won awards in the past for positive action work, and I'd like to see that continued. But well done on all the work you're doing on that front. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Callum.
Okay, just to add to what Carl said, actually, and in fairness, the report really doesn't do it justice. So I did some sums earlier. Paragraph 10, which is 3.5 lines in this report,
Yes.
equates to over 6,000 hours that the service has put into it and working with it. And I just kind of really want to stress people and culture is a very challenging thing that takes continued effort and time to change. And 3.5 lines doesn't quite do that investment justice. But I also want to reiterate, we were last inspected independently by His Majesty's Inspectorate for Constabularies and Fire and Rescue Service in 2022. We were marked good in people, but none of us are taking that for granted, and we've got areas we want to improve. I think the appendix, talking about grievances and discipline, it's important for members to see that. And I won't talk about specific cases in a public environment, but if you want to speak to myself or any of the officers privately, we'll happily share a bit more detail. I think the bit with an organisation of 700 people, there will always be behaviours that don't meet the mark. And I certainly am passionate about where people don't meet the mark, we will hold them to account on that. And that's what that appendix shows. Equally, it shows where there wasn't cases to answer, we're not bound over the same thing. So it's a useful annex for people to see. But I don't want to finish on that. I want to spin it back to the positive of we're making some phenomenal work, and Carl's leading that function at the moment exceptionally well. It just doesn't quite do it justice, unfortunately. So I just wanted to add a bit of flavour to it.
Thank you, Callum. Thank you both. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. I'll move to note A, the people plan and programme of work being implemented across the service, and B, the information related to closed discipline and grievance cases between April 2022 and October 2023. I'll have a seconder, please. Betty, thank you. Those in favour, please show. Thank you. That's duly noted. So that will move on to item number 12, which is the final item on today's agenda, and that's the review and revision of the Constitution. Gemma, I believe you're taking this one for us, please.
Yeah, so just the annual report that we do at this time of year on the Constitution. So we've kind of had a through paragraph 6 and the appendix highlight the main changes. And subject to approval by this committee, the CFA will consider reports next week. And should approval be granted at that meeting, the changes will come into force the following day. There will be further amendments which we're looking at currently, and they will be presented to this committee in the spring related to contract procedure rules and finance procedure rules. That's to say, really.
Thank you very much, Gemma. Has anybody got any questions on those?
It's not a question so much as to say that I'm very pleased that you've actually been revised in the sense the wording around equality to actually bring in inclusion, etc. So yeah, so pleased about that change.
Okay, thank you very much, Betty. There's no further questions, not online. Sorry, I keep forgetting to look down that end of the room. I move that the changes to the Constitution and part of the constitutional framework detailed in the appendix to report be approved and be submitted to the Combined Forum Authority for approval at its meeting next Wednesday, 29th of November 2023. Can I have a seconder, please?
Thank you.
Thank you. Those in favour, please show. That's duly noted. Agenda item 13, urgent items, as mentioned earlier. So I don't have any. Last item is item 14 date of the next meeting, excuse me. That will be on the 13th of March 2024, starting at 2 p.m. Well, thank you all very much for your attendance and input for today's meeting. I close the meeting at 2:59 p.m.
Well done.
We're doing